Another Monday night, another For the Fans podcast. My name is Justin Melillo. Kevin McAdams is alongside me. And we're going to be talking some NASCAR and we're going to be talking some other stuff tonight. Kevin, what's up, bro?
I'm doing a little bit of multitasking. Obviously, football is going on. Got to keep an eye on fantasy football since we all involved in our respective leagues. So not only are we gonna be doing this podcast, but I'm gonna keep an eye on this Browns Jets game, even though it's pretty uncontested by the Jets. They're basically at their emergency third string quarterback at this point. But I'm excited to talk about Vegas. I'm excited to talk about some of the most idiotic things I've seen on Twitter in the last few weeks. Between a couple of them, and I'm excited to talk about the sim racing world because we had a ridiculous finish. People are upset about it. I'm obviously in the defense of who was involved with it, but I'm excited about this episode just because of what we have at hand as far as our topics.
We got a lot of controversy to cover tonight. It's going to be a spicy episode. I can feel it. We're definitely going to get into some things and I am looking forward to it, but you're over there, you're watching football, and another week goes by and another week where I don't care. But I do look at fantasy. I have been trying to keep up with my fantasy team, but I'm gonna go 0-2 this week. So somehow I'm gonna lose to Hitch, and I don't know how that's. I hate to be it. I hate to live it, but it is what it is. I mean, I'm the same record as my beloved Giants and your beloved Dolphins, the two worst teams in the NFL right now.
Yep, it is what it is. I mean, you just told me they just traded our what was it last year or 2017? They just drafted Minka Fitzpatrick, and now he's gone. So, um, less and less to look forward to as far as watching them. But it's football season. Still got stuff to look forward to. So, but let's get into it. Let's talk Vegas.
Sure, let's hop right in. We had three races this weekend. It was all three of the NASCAR National Series. We had the Truck Series. They raced on Friday night. We had the Xfinity Series. They raced on Saturday night. And the Cup Series, for the first time, raced on Sunday night. It was more, day to night for all those races, but that's because of they're on the West Coast. So, whatever. We had, first up, we'll talk a little bit about the Truck Series race and how Austin Hill got to victory lane and all the implications of the Ilmore engines. First and foremost, like I said, Austin Hill, I don't know where he came from, but he ended up in victory lane on Friday night in Las Vegas. It looked to be the Ross Chastain show for the majority of the night, but it was actually more or less the storyline was at least the Ilmore engines and how awful they were for a majority of people and how it shaped the next round of the playoffs. Even the winner, Austin Hill, he had some issues. He had his engine going south a couple times where it would shut off on him, but they persevered through. They the team itself is the defending champions because they won last year with Brett Moffitt. So they they were hoping that it would go green in the end. They were on a different strategy than everybody else. It went green to the end. Their engine didn't misfire, and they ended up in victory lane. So definitely a convincing performance by Austin Hill, his third win of the season. And now we've got our next round, the round of 6 set for the final 3 races, or the final 4 races of the season in the Truck Series.
I'm trying to remember what part failed. It was like something about the rear seal, and it was just one of those things where it seemed it was like a widespread issue because ThorSport had their problems, and Finger goes out, and then me and Sean Butler were watching the race live, and like at the exact same time, Crafton and Solder die, and there was a point where I mean, obviously we had same thing with even on the Chevy side because you had Friesen having his problems, It seemed like you just mentioned it before. Austin Hill was stumbling a little bit in the middle of the race, and the same thing happened for Tyler Ankrum. I mean, he was the guy basically holding on for dear life to a 1 or 2 point lead over Sauter because of Sauter's issues. He relinquished the sixth spot for the next round, and there was a time where he was battling. I think it was Lupton and Jordan Anderson uh, for like 11th or 12th, and he was fast. There was a point where he was in the way back, and he was the second fastest guy on the track, but his engine kept cutting out, and you can see there was like a visual decrease in straightaway speed for him every 3 or 4 laps. And I mean, I don't know what happened. By all means, I'm no engineer, but I mean, it just seemed like there was a widespread issue across the whole field. But uh, it honestly left for a really good race, and honestly, the racing was fantastic. I mean, that was the most lead changes I've seen at a mile and a half across the board of any series in a long time. They were doing really well for themselves in terms of uh, getting around each other and making passes. I know these trucks have a lot of dirty air, but one thing that they do have is a lot of front drag, and that's something that we keep hitting on that they need to work on for maybe the Gen 7. But they can slingshot around each other. I mean, yeah, there's definitely dirty air, but they can slingshot around each other pretty well. So there's some kind of counterbalance to the whole. Oh, well, you get 2 tenths behind a guy, and there's nothing you really can do. You can definitely make a run on someone down the straightaway. So we saw that between Moffitt and Chastain. We saw that in the back half of the top five and top 10 all night. The racing was honestly one of the best races of the year, in my opinion, in terms of pure racing. Vegas has silently become maybe the third best speedway that NASCAR goes to in terms of the mile and a half. So I mean, Homestead's been number one, and now we have Chicagoland just absolutely being one of the older tracks in terms of grip and running up against the wall. And Vegas is no different. I mean, they were running all the way against the wall. You can run the bottom. It's bumpy, mostly down the backstretch and into one and two. But I mean, it's got character at this point. It's over 10 years old in terms of the track surface, so it lent itself for some really good racing. And then of course Austin Hill just comes out of nowhere. I don't know how much newer his tires were, but he absolutely drove through the field and put on a clinic at the end and got around Chastain for the win. And that's a huge win for that Hattori Racing Enterprises team. They're looking to go back to back as far as getting a driver championship and an owner championship. It was a huge victory for Austin Hill as a driver, someone that really wasn't on the radar in terms of someone with a lot of high prospects of talent, and he's got Michigan under his belt as a speedway win, and now he's got Vegas. So I mean, it's not like he hasn't proved to be worth having that ride, and now he's obviously in the picture of a favorite to win between him, Moffitt, and Chastain. I mean, those were the three guys that ran up front all week. So uh, I think it's going to lend themselves to be, like I just said, the favorites to win.
I wouldn't have put Austin Hill in my final four before this race, but
Me
now
neither.
I kind of have to because one of the guys that I had there is out, and that's Grant Infinger. Terrible luck to blow up as early as he did. Um, just just sour luck for him. He had terrible luck last season too that kept him out of the final four, and he was the regular season champion, and unfortunately he won't be racing for a championship this year, which is just absolutely unfortunate. But Austin Hill, yeah, he won at Daytona. Anybody could win at Daytona. Michigan's a little bit tougher to win at because it is going to require a little bit more skill, but it's still one of those tracks where they're racing almost pack racing for a lot of the event. So Austin Hill, his two wins really didn't move the meter too much for me, but this win, through all the adversity, through everything that was happening, through just the perseverance and the drive to get to the front and hold on to the lead, he can't you can't say he's not a legitimate threat anymore. I think Hill, Moffitt, and Chastain are just those are the three that are definitely going to be there, and then that fourth and final spot is up for grabs. Um, you've got Friesen, who he won at Eldora, and he's been one of the more consistent drivers all season, but at the same time he's had his share of bad luck. Matt Crafton, who hasn't won in a couple years, he barely makes it into the next round because he also blew up at the same time as his teammate, as we saw just before. And then you got Tyler Ankrum, who probably wasn't going to advance to this round if the things didn't happen to either Johnny Sauter or Grant Enfinger. But he fights till he fights on. He lives another day. Tyler Ankrum. I mean, anything can happen at this point for that fourth spot. But I think it's a pretty set lock for Moffitt, Hill, and Chastain to be racing for a championship this year, barring any misfortunes that could happen in the next three races. They're going to be off for a little bit now. They're not going to be racing again until Talladega, which is I want to say three weekends from now. So they got a little bit of time to stew after this round of 8 is completed, and when their round of 6 begins, it's going to be gloves off, and whoever wins and gets in. I mean, we could see Ankrum, we could see Crafton, we could see any one of these 6 guys lock their ticket in. We could see none of them lock their ticket at Talladega, but that's just the nature of the beast.
Yeah, Talladega is always a wild card. It seems like these plate races or non-plate races at this point are just always bananas here. I mean, when I talk about wild cards winning, I mean Parker Kligerman wins in the 75 truck. What was it, 2 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean anyone can win, even someone like a Natalie Decker, as long as she just
Whoa,
stays
whoa, 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 whoa.
she can get pushed out to a win.
Let's not get too hasty there.
Yeah. But typically, if you have enough help, like I assume the Toyota guys, the DGR Crosley guys will help each other. I assume the GMS guys will help each other and form some kind of alliance. It seems like these teams and these manufacturers have been increasingly supportive of each other in terms of running with the mindset we need to get our manufacturer in there. Now with Thor Sport being pretty much the only 4 team, we'll see how they can maybe push Kraft into a win. I think that's going to be priority number 1 for that organization now that he's the only real threat for a championship at this point. It's going to be interesting. I think the 3 races that they have left are all real special. You got obviously Talladega, which we've been talking about. Martinsville, they're running there on the 26th of October, 2 weeks after Dega. And then 2 weeks after that, they go to ISM. And Phoenix has been a really good race for these truck guys the last few years. And they're running at night, which I think that's one of the few tracks that actually makes the racing a little bit better when they run at night. Plus, it just looks so cool with the new stands and the new setup there. So I think it's going to be a wild 3 weeks. I don't necessarily think anyone is locked in. I think we'll know a lot more after Dega, because all it takes is someone getting involved into an early wreck and they're out 40 points, and maybe even more because of the stages. So it could be, you never know. You really, I mean, Ankrum could pull off a win, and then Crafton could pull out. He's still a good driver. It's not like he's no slouch. He can pull off an end to the streak and run really well at Martinsville and get a win there. And then you'd have a battle between the rest of the. You'd have Friesen, Hill, Moffitt, and Chastain battling for 2 spots. So anything can happen, and we've seen this truck season be just just an absolute display of you never can expect what happens next. And we've seen, I mean, Ankrum shouldn't even be in this playoffs according to a lot of people. So I don't think there's a lock yet for anybody until Talladega progresses as wild card as it is. Unless something crazy doesn't happen, anything, any of these four guys have a shot, in my opinion.
Do you think the Ilmore issues that were at Las Vegas were an isolated incident, or do you think they might play into the rest of the remaining part of the schedule, the last four races?
Well, it happened to everybody. I thought, like, man, someone is sabotaging ThorSport right now because there were three trucks in that team, and three of them went to hell. And I thought, well, somebody's got to be conspiring against these guys because I know they've been really, like, Sauter's been really vocal, the Ilmore engines and or someone else running a different package and them getting an advantage or a disadvantage, so I thought it was something crazy. And then I heard, well, Friesen had his issues. Austin Hill had his issues in the middle of the race. Tyler Ankrum had his issues in the middle of the race. So, I mean, it was not isolated in terms of teams. I mean, this happens in the world of engineering. They look to make things better, make things easier to build, make them cheaper. I mean, this is a business in the grand scheme of things. These Ilmore guys are looking to produce top end engines at an affordable rate and for these teams. And sometimes, whether it's cutting corners on cost or just a batch of bad equipment, went through the process of engineering them, and they had a bad week. I mean, even the best of the best have these incidents. TRD has had their issues in the past in Cup, where an entire organization like Gibbs runs out of luck and has engine failures. I mean, it happens to Hendrick. It's happened to Roush. Every single company that we can think of that's made engines in the past have had something like this. I remember when it was like 6 cars that had Hendrick power at Talladega in 2002 had all failures. And you know what? The next time they went to a plate race, you better believe they had the most efficient, most reliable engine. So I think they'll get it fixed. I think a place like Talladega, where engines are a little bit easier to maintain because they're not running high RPMs, they're not going up and down, like they do at a speedway. I think they can produce something really reliable and fast. I've never seen anything like that happen at a plate race in a long time. So I think this is going to be a 1 week issue, because I think if it becomes a 2 week issue, I think teams are going to get really, really upset, and they would start looking elsewhere for help on these engines. Because if NASCAR is providing these and they start becoming the factor of why people are starting to lose points in this championship, there's going to be a lot of upset team owners and a lot of upset drivers, and I don't think they can afford that.
Yeah, I really do hope that it is an isolated incident, but you never know. The second race of the weekend, we go to the Xfinity Series. They raced also at Las Vegas Motor Speedway, and it was Tyler Reddick who won. But it wasn't Tyler Reddick who dominated. It was Christopher Bell who dominated. He absolutely spanked the field. But Tyler Reddick and his crew chief, who's his crew chief?
Hold on.
He's got I know this too. He's got Burnett. He's got Randall Burnett, right? Yes, Randall Burnett. And they played the strategy, and they were able to make it work, where it was them and it was Gray Galding who were on this strategy. The caution came out really, early, like, considering how many laps to go. I think it was like 75 laps to go, or 73 or 72 laps to go, and they decided to pit. When is this? I'm looking for it right now. It was at lap 129. The caution
Yeah,
comes
that's
out.
71 to go.
71 laps to go. Reddick goes in and he pits and he tops off. Uh, Gray Galding did too, but Gray Galding wasn't really a factor for the win. He was in second for a little bit, but then he fell back and finished in seventh, but he made it. But yeah, they stretched it over, just about 70 laps to go on and win. Christopher Bell absolutely dominated this race. He led. It was him. Justin Allgaier was there, and he would
Fast.
steal a lap. What?
I said he was fast. Allgaier was really quick. I mean, honestly, he was probably the second best car all day, and then Reddick was third. But
Right.
yeah, just I don't know what that 20 car has underneath that body. Man, they're producing some really fast cars, and it's man, it's unfortunate that they keep getting screwed out of these because of strategy or bad just bad luck. Because he should have like 10 wins at this point.
I would agree with you on that. I think 10 wins is maybe even too low of a number. That 20 team has just been on point all season. And not to say that Reddick's team hasn't. They haven't been, just not at that level. And Reddick's kind of like stolen a couple of wins. Like, not to say that he didn't earn them, but he definitely wasn't supposed to win a couple of the races that he's won this season. And same can be said for Cole Custer. The ones that Bell's won, he's gone out and won them. He's gone out and led the most laps, or led, majority of the laps. And I've said it a couple of weeks ago. I keep saying it. Christopher Bell is the full package right now. Now that he's gone and he's gotten a road course victory, and he's gotten competitive at road courses, and he can go and win at any track that's thrown in front of him, he's going to be damn near unstoppable for the rest of the season. And barring situations like what happened on Saturday night, where he got beat by strategy, not by his speed, because he led 154 of the 200 laps. The only laps he didn't lead were the laps that Justin Allgaier stole from him, and the laps that Tyler Reddick was out there trying to save enough gas to hold off Bell to win the race at the end. And otherwise, it was all Bell. He won the two stages in the race. So the playoffs are set now. And Reddick goes in as the regular season champion. Christopher Bell, Cole Custer, Big Three. They finished 1-2-4. And yeah, it was I watched this race for the most part, and it really, being that Bell was just out front for as long as he was, I saw Allgaier kind of get up there and kind of, he'd have his moment and then he'd fall back. And then he'd have his moment on a restart and then he'd fall back. It's incredible that looking at the points right now, Bell, he's got, his 55 playoff points. Custer and Reddick both enter with 44 playoff points. And then the next closest driver is Austin Cindric. He's only got 17 playoff points. That means that the big three all have a 27-point advantage over the rest of the field. That's half a race. That's pretty much half a race, and they're not gonna go out there. I don't think they're gonna go out there and have three bad races. And even if they did, we saw it last year. Allgaier didn't have the best playoffs. He still made it out of the first round. He wasn't so lucky in the second round because the competition kind of hunkered down after that. But I really think it's going to be the big three and one other person, as we've always talked about every week.
And I mean, if you look at the actual standings as it stands, I mean, I think that's a good template for who goes through each round. I mean, I think the bottom four in the standings as it stands right now, Nemechek, Sieg, Haley, and Jones, I'm perfectly fine with them being eliminated in the first round. And then And then you just pretty much roll the dice on the rest. I mean, I don't know if Gregson or Annette's going to be up there. It's pretty much going to be a battle between Cindric, Briscoe, and Allgaier who's going to get that final fourth spot. And from a speed standpoint, if Allgaier can complete a race and put a full race together, he's the guy. He's the fourth guy. He could play spoiler in Homestead. I mean, he's got the fastest guy or the fastest car out of those four, or out of those three every week. Cindric really isn't battling for wins. Briscoe normally plays second fiddle to Custer, uh, but Allgaier has been there. I mean, if he didn't have that issue at Bristol, he'd have a win, and he'd be right there. He'd be probably 20, 30 points still behind Bell, but he's had misfortune this year. He just needs to put it all together. And if he can do that in one race, all it takes is one good race in the playoffs in that round of 8, and all it takes is a really good effort at Homestead, putting it all together. We forget that the team that Reddick drove for was JRM, and for the most part, they put a lot of their effort this year into that 7 team. I think you even mentioned, I think the 9 car crew chief for last year is for the 8, but they're still putting a lot of effort in that 7 car. So I really think he's going to be the fourth guy, just because out of those 3, Briscoe, Cindric, and Allgaier, I think Allgaier is the most talented. And on top of that, I think he's got the fastest car out of those 3 guys. But at the end of the day, that's the fourth guy. We got the top 3, and I mean, we've talked about that at ad nauseum. They are, without a doubt, the favorites to win the championship, and I think they're gonna. I mean, they've got 17 wins combined this year out of 26 possible winners, and every week. Bell is super fast. Sometimes it's Custer. Most of the time, though, if you want to talk about consistency, Reddick has the consistency. And I think at Homestead, that's not going to really matter who's been dominant the rest of the year. Reddick is so good at running that wall at Homestead. Custer's been really fast there too, and of course Bell's been the top guy the last few weeks. So we talk about it so often. This is probably going to be the best battle of the year in terms of who's going to like the who's going to win the championship. It's like, well, any of them could just. It's going to be really close all race. I think it's going to be one of those races that we remember for a long time because all 3 of them are going to be battling for that win, and I think that's how it's going to be. You have to win to win the championship. It's been like that for the Cup Series for the last 3 or 4 years. I think it's going to be the same way for Xfinity. Whoever wins that Xfinity race at Homestead will come out as your champion. That's my thought of it. I really don't think anyone else has a chance. And as far as the race goes, I thought it was fine. I'm used to it at this point. These guys dominating. I mean, the class of the field is often the same 3 or 4 guys, and the equipment disparity becomes pretty evident as you get into like outside the top 10. There's a reason why Greg Galding is in the 08 with 4 top 10s on the year in 13th place. That's just insanity in my opinion, but. We've talked about that too, just how imbalanced or unbalanced the equipment is between a top 10 and a top 5 even. So not much to talk about in my opinion. Just more of the same. We've got one of the big 3 winning a race yet again.
Yep. Nothing too out of the ordinary in this one. And I agree with you with your assessment of who is gonna move on. I would say, looking at this, Nemechek, Sieg, they're definitely not gonna make it out of the first round. Then it's a toss up between Net, Gregson, Jones, and Haley, the last 2. Either way, whoever makes it out of this round isn't gonna make it out of the next round. Looking at the last round, you've got pretty much three intermediate tracks: Kansas, Texas, and ISM. Justin Allgaier has been really good at ISM in the past, and I'll look for him to be really good again this year. And if he doesn't have a win at that point in the season, first of all, sad. Second of all, I think they're going to pull out all the stops to make sure he gets that victory and locks himself in. And that would be the ultimate momentum to propel him towards the championship. But yeah, I think I don't think there's much more to say about what happened on Saturday afternoon other than Bell pretty much got hosed by strategy and by one of his biggest competitors who you don't have to have the fastest car to win the race, and Tyler Reddick proved that, and Tyler Reddick proved that even though he had less wins than the other two, he could go on and win a regular season championship. So we'll move on from that. Congratulations to Tyler Reddick on his victory and his regular season championship. Let's move on to the big league. We got Martin Truex Jr., someone who you think is more the crew chief getting the wins than the driver.
I do.
But Truex has the most wins on the season, or Cole Perrin has the most wins on the season, whichever way you look at it. After his victory at Las Vegas Motor Speedway on Sunday night, they raced the 400 miles, started in the daytime, got temperatures over 140 degrees in the cockpit. Cooled down at night. Didn't cool down too much, but did cool down at the night, and you're able to see at the beginning it was kind of like the Penske and Stewart Haas brigade with the Fords, and then slowly but surely you had the Toyota of Martin Truex Jr. creep into it, and it was him versus Logano at the end of the second stage, which was a great battle where Matt DiBenedetto kind of didn't give Logano a lot of space there as he was trying to pass him, and they were coming up on a lap car, which is fine. He's battling to stay on the lead lap. That allowed Truex to get alongside Logano, take the lead. Truex went on to win at the second stage, and he also allowed DiBenedetto to get his lap back, which was, I guess, a little bit of sportsmanship there. Truex goes on. Logano actually, he was really fast regardless, but he ended up getting back in the thick of things, and on one of the restarts, he ended up getting into it with, I think he got into it first in a four wide situation. I can't remember who he hit, but then the next time by or whatever, it was Suarez. That's who it was. They were like four wide, and he hit Suarez, and then the next time by, Logano's up high trying to pass, and Suarez just like squeezes him in the wall and gave him some pretty significant damage and kind of relegated him back to a ninth place finish. I think without that damage, Logano would have been more of a threat to win than he was at the end of the race. But Martin Truex Jr., he went on. He won the race. He was celebrating. He's moving on to the next round already. What are your thoughts?
I just want to make a quick tangent. How many blown tires happen because of very, very slight contact this week? Because it just frustrates the crap out of me that we used to have this kind of stuff happen all the time. And when they had the flat fenders and the fenders didn't overlap the tires, it was more like, they just kind of bump and bang, and it's just whatever. And look at Xfinity, they bump and bang, and they have the composite bodies, and they can take a real hit even to the wall, and it keeps everything uniform and keeps everything looking nice and pretty, except for maybe a little scuff mark here and there. I think it was Blaney just barely gets into Byron, and he loses a left rear. The same thing, I think it happened to Boyer.
Well, Kurt Busch ended up out of the race because of slight contact.
Yeah, and he was going to come in and pit, and right as he comes in the pit, same thing. It's just crazy that these small little incidents. we know what it's like for one small little tap can ruin. I mean, in the sim racing world, you barely tap someone and they're going flying. But these guys are barely nudging each other, and they're ruining each other's races for slight contact. I mean, it's just insanity to me that something so minor ruined a lot of races, I just think that the quicker they get rid of these steel bodies, the better, because it's obvious that the way the mold of the car is, uh, it's just not favorable for close racing. I mean, they can't even touch each other without ruining each other's races. But that's a tangent of mine. I just wanted to briefly talk about. I thought the first half of the race was pretty good, just because you had the Stewart Haas guys pretty much dominating, and here comes Logano, and it was obvious that they were set up differently. I mean, the Stewart Haas guys had low drag, low downforce in mind because they were worried about straightaway speed, and obviously clean air is king. So if you can stay out front the first 10 laps, you're good to go. Well, here comes Logano out of absolutely nowhere. I think he started like 22nd. Yeah, 22nd, and in 40 laps, which does not happen anymore, just just flew through the field. I remember looking at telemetry. There was a clip where Suarez was on the bottom and he was doing like 161 miles an hour, and here comes Logano against the wall doing 168 miles an hour. Just absolutely. Who cares if you don't have corner speed? You can't keep it with the straightaway speed because there's no horsepower in these cars. So here comes Logano, and not only is he faster in the corner, he's faster in the straightaway because he's maintaining his momentum. And obviously, this race was day to night, so that was pretty temporary until he got destroyed by Suarez. But I mean, for a good part of that day portion, he had the car to beat. And then here comes Harvick. Harvick has been he's either been lights out and then bad luck hits him, or he's been 15th place. It's been a really weird year for him. And then I've mentioned it before. I do. I'm probably in the minority on this because I mean he was a good driver for Earnhardt and for Michael Waltrip, but I think the success of that team is all with Cole. I think if they put Eric Jones in that car, the same thing happens. I think if they put uh, even Christopher Bell in that 19 car, I think it does even better. I think even if you put like a guy like Moffitt or Chastain, any of those guys, they can win a race. So I mean, Martin Truex Jr. is a good driver. I would put him in the same vein as like a Matt Kenseth. Very good driver, gets the job done. He can put a good car in a good position and win the race. I don't think he's a generational talent like a Kyle Busch, or even like a Jimmy Johnson or a Jeff Gordon. He's definitely on the top side in terms of he is a very good driver, but for the most part, he really didn't have the success until Cole Perrin, uh, with Furniture Row, just started producing these wicked fast cars. And obviously, it's Gibbs equipment, and obviously, he's in a very good ride just because of that. He's in the 19 now, and the only real guy that's produced better than him is Bush. And I think you mentioned it. He has the most wins of the year, and that's good for him. But that I still got to give a lot of credit to Cole. He's that kind. He's that guy. He's what Evernham was in the 90s. He's what Knaus was in the 2000s and even the early 2010s. Cole Perrin is a generational crew chief, and he's going to be around for a very long time. If he sticks around with Truex for a long time, he's going to be racking up titles. I would not surprise me in 5 or 6 years we have Martin Truex Jr., three-time champion, if he continues to race, four-time champion, whatever he ends up having. I do not think that discredits Truex as a driver. I think it just gives more credit to how fantastic of a crew chief that Cole Perrin is. I mean, these cars, for the most part, are very, very close. And the difference that every week to week, look at Rodney Childers and Kevin Harvick. You want to talk about a relationship that just works? They are lights out almost every single week. They run up front. Bad luck, whatever it is, gets them out of the lead a lot of the time. but they are up front. And I mean, look at Canales and Johnson for a long time. They would be gapping people every single race, 3 4 tenths a lap. I mean, that's not just talent. That is a straight up badass fast car, and that's what Truex has. And you could even say the same thing for when Logano is fast. I mean, he has a really good crew chief. He has Todd Gordon. He's a really good crew chief, and we don't talk about the crew chiefs because they're not the person. They're not the guy that's out there doing the interviews. We got to give them a lot of the credit these days for who is fast and who wins out there. I mean, I would love for a series to really come down to who's the best driver, but it's so hard. It's so hard to think of it that way because these cars are so they're so complex, and these guys figure out these crazy ways to make them fast. I mean, stuff that it would just go over our head. There's no way they'd be able to explain it in layman's terms to someone like us. So, I mean, I can't discredit Truex as a driver to a point. I mean, he's obviously got talent. He's putting that car in victory lane, especially the last 3 or 4 years. So, but I have to give credit to Cole as well.
I don't think anybody's trying to take any credit away from Cole though, because we know that Truex is nothing without Cole. He doesn't win the championship without Cole. I don't think anybody's trying to take that away from Cole Perrin. I think Martin Truex Jr. has the talent, and I think that Cole's just able to represent that in his building of cars. And with that, Martin Truex Jr. is the first driver to advance already in the playoffs. You got Kevin Harvick and Logano who are up there in points. Kyle Busch had to use a little bit of his insurance. We'll talk about that in a second. Keselowski, Elliott, Hamlin, Larson, Byron, Blaney, Bowman, and Almirola are all in. Then you got Ryan Newman, who just won't go away. He's in 13th. He's only 6 points out. You got Kurt Busch, who we saw blow a tire and end up finishing last. He's down to 14th now. Clint Boyer, who started on the pole, ended up having an absolutely miserable race. He's 15th in the points. And then Eric Jones, who had some transmission issues, I believe. He ends up bottom of the barrel right now. He's 16th in the points. Newman he's within striking range on points. Kurt Busch, I'd say he's within striking range on points. But I look at Boyer and Jones, and I look at the way that the season has gone, and I look at the way that their seasons have gone. I gotta say that they're pretty much dead in the water unless they can eke out a win in the next 2 weeks. And then I look at the bubble area, and I look at Bowman, and I look at Almirola. Those two worry me because they've had moments of brilliance, but they really haven't had the consistency. Whereas Blaney has been consistently fast, and Byron has been consistently fast. And I would say that after race one, they're pretty much Byron and Blaney will probably be all right, but Bowman and Almirola, they're kind of iffy, in my opinion. Everybody else is probably gonna end up where they lie, but I can't foresee Kurt Busch just laying down and giving up at this point. I think Kurt's gonna fight his way back in, and Newman, like I said, he won't go away, and he's only 6 points out. It'll be interesting to see what goes on at Richmond, where again, we'll talk about it in a second, but Kyle Busch said they can't pass, so we'll see if that is that holds true.
The one thing, I think it was Steve Letarte mentioned it during the broadcast for the race. The issue with Newman is that he's an 11th to 16th place guy for majority of the race, so he does not produce stage points, and we're getting to the nitty gritty as far as points is concerned. Like that's where a lot of these guys have to produce. Is they have to produce on a weekly basis. Not even in terms of consistency, they have to produce some really, really good races. I don't think Blaney will get eliminated, like you said. I don't think Byron will have any issues. They've been really good lately. They were running up front for the win at one point. Him and Chase. Uh, I don't I don't see Kurt getting eliminated. So basically, you got Jones, who has produced pretty much no points at this point. He had 2 points. He scored 2 points at Vegas. Then you have Boyer, and I've been talking about Boyer's luck, and you make your own luck a lot of the times, and putting yourself in a really bad spot. He had another bad week, another bad luck week. He had another horrible finish, and it's just more of the same. He was on the bubble for a reason. He almost got kicked out at Indy for a reason. So uh, I don't see him making his way back. So it's basically, and I don't think Newman will either. I don't think he's going to have the points. These stage points, or the lack thereof, will be the biggest issue for him. Almirola gets stage points. Bowman, for the most part, he's a guy that runs fifth to eighth a lot. He's normally the second guy, second or third guy at Hendrick, and most of the time that's barely outside the top 10 or just inside the top 10. So that stuff adds up. 2 3 points here and there in one stage, 3 or 4 points in another. So I think it's honestly going to be uh, really really close for Kurt to get in. But if I'm picking out of those three, man, that's so close. That is so tough. Uh, hmm. I guess I got to go with maybe Bowman. I mean, he's got, what is that, a 20 or 18 point lead over Kurt. Man, I just think we're gonna have the same thing happen this year, where it's gonna be that close, and someone's gonna have to either make a crazy move for the win. I think they still do the finale at the Roval for the first round. I have to look at the schedule, but it's going to be some craziness in this first round, just because it's so close. There's going to be guys making desperate moves, especially if Kurt and Eric are where they are now in terms of points. I mean, Eric can win a race at any week. They've been fast every week, and it was an exception this week. He had issues, obviously, and same thing with Kurt. He's been top guy week in and week out for Ganassi. So, man, I hate it for both those teams, because I do think they can be legitimate shots at least getting into the round of 8. But that's why we run the races, and that's why we go through the motions and see who actually ends up being that guy who breaks out and who has bad luck, and that's just part of racing. So it's so close. It's so close between those three at this point, in terms of who's got an advantage and who's been fast week in and week out. So it's too early to tell for me who gets eliminated. At least that last guy. So
Kyle Busch was the regular season champion, and he went in as the point leader in the playoff points, and now he's 19 points out of the lead, and he had an absolutely rough night at Las Vegas. And I mean, he didn't mince words. He was he hit the wall. He ran into the back of Garrett Smithley, and then after the race, he was unapologetic to members of the media. It was not a good night for Kyle Busch. I mean, you want to talk about, you were saying how there's an 18-point gap in between Bowman and Kurt. I mean, Kyle lost 20 points in one night, or more than that, because of everything that happened. So, anything can happen, but just looking at some of the things that Kyle had said, he thought he had about a fourth place car, but he ran 19th. Some of the quotes here, he was told that the car that he ran into, who was Garrett Smithley in the 52, he was told that he was going to go high, and he thought he was going to go high, and then he ended up going middle, and he ran into the back of him. I'm going to try and see if I have a video here of it, but yeah, I mean, you can just look at the damage on his nose there. He just runs into the back of him. After the race, he goes on a tirade. I'm gonna see if I can find that too. And basically, he was in the media bullpen. What they do is they bring the championship eligible drivers and the top 10 finishers. They bring them over to an area on pit road where there are reporters, and they bring them like one or two at a time, and the reporters all huddle around, and the drivers are obligated to answer questions there, or they get fined, as Kurt Busch did earlier in the season. And so Kyle goes up, and I think it's Bob Pockris. He's asking the first couple questions, and he's like blowing him off, and like one word answers, two word answers. Starts quoting Marshawn Lynch. I'm just here so I won't get fined. And as the questions are wrapping up, I think Jeff Gluck asked him the last question, and he rolls his eyes, he turns around and looks at one of the members of the NASCAR media that was running the ship, and he's like, "Am I done here? Can I go? These guys are asking the stupidest fucking questions I've ever heard in my life." And that was about it. That was Kyle Busch post race. He gave a little bit better of a time to NBC. He had to wait for NBC, and he had to give NBC a couple of minutes. And he said something to the effect of his insurance has run out and that his premiums are going to go up, which was pretty funny. He made Junior and Letarte laugh in the booth. But I mean, this is Kyle Busch. They talked about it on the radio a lot today, because I mean, who wouldn't talk about Kyle Busch blowing up? Everybody's talking about Kyle Busch. This is a story right now. Is Kyle Busch is maybe showing signs of weakness, where he's showing that he's flappable, showing that things are getting under his skin. We know all season that he's said how much he hates this package. He's been very vocal and very sour about a lot of the points of this season. Even in winning, he's been very unhappy. It's been a very unhappy year for Kyle Busch, and that just it kind of came to a head on Sunday night, where he had a bad race and he let everybody know it, and maybe he shouldn't have. Maybe in this instance he should have just maybe kept his words to himself, or maybe thought of a better strategy, because now I feel like the other drivers know that Kyle Busch can easily get agitated and could get out of his mojo and maybe not even race for a championship.
Well, I'm going to go through all these topics. I still think Kyle's a favorite to win the championship. I don't think that changes. I mean, the guy's had these breakdowns or blow ups, a handful of times, and he's still a top performer the next week. So, well, let's talk about his issue with the package. Lap 3, lap 4, whatever happened, he's in the middle of the pack and just loses the car. And it looked like he got loose, but we're talking about in the middle of the pack, they're cranking the wheel because there's so much dirty air. So he's cranking the wheel. He maybe gets a little bit more air on his nose than he anticipates, gets the car loose, hits the wall. That's the beginning of his calamity of the whole entire week, or for the race itself. And then you have, and this is something that I'm going to go on about for a little bit. These Rick Ware racing cars, these premium cars, they're so slow. They're dangerously slow, in my opinion. I just remember 8, 10, 12, 15 years ago where a guy was a second off the pace and they were last. Now they're 3, 4 seconds off the pace, and these guys are getting laps 17, 18, 20 laps every single week. And we're talking, if you actually look at the video, I forget who he's behind, but they go low around Smithley in the 52, and he has 1-2 seconds at the most to react. And these guys they're not able to just change trajectory on the fly. The way they have to set up the corner, they are going to a certain point on the track, and that's where they're going to be. Obviously, if If his spotter's saying he's going to go high and he's going middle, that's what's one thing. But it'd be a whole different story if there's a car that's 30 miles an hour off pace for a package that they were talking about how a Rick Ware racing car could hang on to the pack and they'd be competing for a good finish. That's not happening. It's the same thing every single week. It's the same issues every single week. You have a guy in the lead, pulls away, regardless of who it is. I mean, look what happened last week. Ryan Blaney gets the lead from Harvick on a restart, side drafts the holy hell out of him on a restart. It was you're showing it now. Oh, it was Byron. Okay. Um, and he pulls away, but then he's in traffic. He falls 5 spots because of the dirty air. The dirty air is a fucking joke, and Kyle Busch knows it. And we're talking about going next. Okay, so that's the whole Smithley thing. And like I said, I'm not going to blame. I know he blamed it on Smithley being a bad driver, a driver with no experience and no wins and a late model or whatever it is. Like, I think Garrett Smithley is a perfectly capable driver, given what he's in. He's in a Rick Ware Racing third, fourth, fifth, second car, and those cars are not there to win. They're not even there to place top 30. They're there to turn a profit for a team that runs 35th in a 38 car field, sometimes a 36 car field. That's what they are. That's what they do. No different than Justin Haley when he was in the 77. No different than the premium guys. Ross Chastain's out there running the high line the whole entire race, pushing leaders down the straightaway because he has nothing else better to do because his car is 3 seconds off pace. Cannot blame Garrett Smithley there in terms of his speed. All on Rick Ware Racing. You have the media just coming up with these rudimentary, irrelevant, like, oh, these are not very specific questions. Hey, man, you had a really tough day. What happened out there? You didn't see the fucking race? You didn't see, like, what happened to me? Like, figure it out for yourself. Obviously, they're trying to get a quote from him, but, like, you got to have some imagination there. So I can understand his frustration there. I mean, he's being asked these same questions week in and week out, and it's like, you already know the answer. It's like, hey, man, you had a really bad night. How do you feel? How do you think I feel? I feel like crap. Like, I just had to deal with being 2 laps down, going through the field, getting somehow up to a top 5, and then I get wrecked by a lap car that's going 25 miles an hour off pace in the middle of the corner. Like, what do you think?
Well, hold on a second. It is the media's job to ask those mundane questions, and it's his, unfortunately for him, it's his job to answer them, and that's how he chose to answer them, and that's completely on him.
Oh, I understand, like, you have to, like, look at, there's guys, there's personalities all across sports. Look at Greg Popovich from the San Antonio Spurs, their coach. He's made a career out of being like this to the media, so it's not like it's something new. So, I mean, that's just one thing. Then he's talking about Richmond next week. We go back to the package. If you can't pass at Richmond, a place where they're going 85 miles an hour on the corner, there's something fundamentally wrong, and we already know that. So there's that part. And then we talk about the issue with, his points, and he lost a lot of ground. I think he's fine. I honestly think he's fine. But it's just one of those situations where I understand his frustration. I 100% am on his side. The only thing I really have a gripe about is that he attacked Garrett Smithley. I don't think it's his deal. I don't think that was his fault at all. I mean, obviously, the spotter said he was going to go high. He went 10 feet off the wall and got hit in the back by Kyle Busch. I don't think that's his fault. I don't think that's Kyle's fault. I think it's just a matter of that's a blind spot. You have a guy going low in front of him in Byron, and then he has nowhere to go. He had nowhere to go, and he hit the back of him. And it sucks, and it's a shitty situation, not only for Kyle, but now you got Garrett Smithley, who is pretty much an innocent bystander because he's in a terrible car. I just think it's ridiculous that NASCAR lets those guys go out there. I think it's incredibly dangerous that you've got cars 3-4 seconds off pace, going 180 miles an hour. It's incredibly dangerous. And I saw someone on Twitter say, well, that's how it was 30, 40 years ago. Well, guess what? It ain't 30 or 40 years ago. The standard should be a lot higher. The standard should be that everyone should be competitive. And you know what? If you're not certain speed, get off the track, period. I don't care what you're there for. Get off the track. You're causing problems. You're in the way. You're in the way. You're basically a moving chicane for these guys who actually are racing and not parading around for a profit. It's ridiculous.
I sent a message to the group on Saturday where Landon Castle was qualifying the 89 car, and he was more than 3 seconds faster than the slowest qualifier at that time, which I think there was like 8 people qualified at that moment, and the 89 car is not a front runner car. They're
That's
back.
Morgan Shepherd's car.
It's
It's
Morgan
like what?
Shepherd's car, exactly. That car start in parks every week, and that car was 3 seconds faster than the slowest car. So you can imagine how much faster the pole sitter was than the slowest car, and that is a weekly occurrence now in the Cup Series. And I'm gonna take a different path where I don't mind it. I think it adds another element to the race. It's not, yeah, it's incredibly, you know, you look at these guys like Garrett Smithley, like Justin Haley was in the 77 car, like Reed Sorensen is on a weekly basis, like all the Rick Ware cars are, and yeah, they're going out there and they don't have the budgets that the other teams do. But you also got to remember where Furniture Row had come from before they won their championship. They were the same type of deal. And I'm not saying that any of these teams are going to blossom into the next Furniture Row Racing, but everybody's got to start somewhere. They're out there. They're putting the same, you know, money down to get into the race. They're putting the same entry fee in. They're following the rules and guidelines that NASCAR sets forth, and they're able to produce a car that is able to race on the track. And NASCAR does set a minimum speed that these guys are hitting. Maybe they should make that minimum speed a little bit closer. I'm not disputing that at all, but I'm just saying that these guys do have the right to be out there. And yeah, it really sucked for Kyle Busch in the moment. Really sucks for Garrett Smithley being on the receiving end of that punt. Smithley, he didn't spin or anything from it. It was Kyle Busch who got completely screwed out of it. When you think about it, I just think that the back markers are part of the show, and they're, if you take out the back markers, you take out the slower cars, we're only going to have 20 to 25 car fields, and who wants that? I'd rather that's IndyCar, size fields at this point, and IndyCar doesn't have the nearly as amount. I can't speak. Fuck. Anyway, NASCAR's awesome. I love back markers. They add an element to it. It's when we went to Bristol, you look at Bristol. It's such a short track, and you fit 40 cars onto that track, and you got maybe 20 cars who can hold pace, and you got 20 cars that can't hold pace. And these guys are constantly in traffic. And that's what made that race end up the way it was. Did it suck for DiBenedetto having to, deal with Ryan Newman? Yeah. But Ryan Newman wasn't a back marker. Ryan Newman is one of the chase contenders, and not for nothing, Matt Benedetto isn't a chase contender, but maybe he could have been if he would have won that race. Anyway, it adds a different element to it. I mean, they're not having guys who get involved in wrecks go back out there anymore, which is, I guess that's one safety thing. I mean, they wouldn't have them go out there anyway because of, minimum speeds as it were. I'm rambling. I like back markers. I hear you that you don't, and you want them to get off the track, but I completely disagree.
Well, hold on. I don't hate back markers. I hate back markers that are going as slow as they are. I just remember going back. Obviously, this was like the golden age of NASCAR, the '90s, the 2000s, and going back to IndyCar real quick. You want to talk about competitiveness? Like the whole entire field has a shot at winning. I mean, obviously, there's definitely some big teams like Penske and Ganassi and all that. Andretti. Obviously, those guys are always up front. But I mean, there are instances where a Dale Coyne car gets in up there and a Schmidt car gets up there. There
Well,
They're
Takuma
gonna
Sato has 2 wins this season.
right. So I mean, like it's a lot closer in terms of competitiveness. I mean, and another thing that IndyCar does right, and I'm hoping that Dallara being introduced as a rumor for the Gen 7, uh, hopefully that makes it cheaper because I think it was Roger Penske said it costs the same for me to run 4 cars competitively in IndyCar as it does to run one Cup car. That needs to change
Oh yeah.
because if these guys are having to fork out $10 to $12 million to be competitive, of course you're not going to have a guy like Rick Ware Racing come into the track with a competitive car. You're not going to have the 32 car being fast. I mean, they're just basically buying hand-me-down equipment from from Ford guys, from Chevy guys, from Toyota guys. And that's what the 95 is this year. They're 2018 Toyota cars. And besides that little 8 to 10 week run, they've been a 20th place car, 25th place car, as where they probably should be. So it's just one of those things where I think uh, NASCAR, the sanctioning body, needs to recognize that these teams are so far apart, and obviously it's the matter. Oh, the free market, like that's what a lot of people are like. They want the best teams to be up front, but like it's not like it was in the '90s where everyone would get their chassis from the same guy. I remember reading Michael Waltrip's book, and he said the same chassis that Dale Earnhardt bought, I went to the same guy, and guess what? We had the same chassis, and we got the same engine, and we set it up however we needed to set it up, and guess what? He was competitive. It's not like that anymore. A lot of these chassis are built in house. They're really intricate. They're really expensive because they have all these fabricators and all these engineers. It's become a very scientific sport, as it should be, because it's engineering and it's aerodynamics and it's all this and that. And I think for the sport to improve, they need to take that out. They need to make it very simplistic. I'm not saying IROC. I'm not saying let's make these cars identical, but I do think that a lot of it needs to be uh, put in a spec type format. Everyone has the same chassis. Everyone has the same chance to have a really uh, fast car. From that aspect, everyone has really good engines. There's 3 or 4 different manufacturers or providers of engines at this point. Everyone can get a really good engine. I mean, we've seen the front row guys be fast at places like Talladega. I think it would be great if someone like a Landon Castle for Starcom running in the top 10 because they nailed the setup. I miss those days because I mean that used to happen. There's a reason why guys like Johnny Benson and Ricky Craven and John Andretti, when Richard Petty's cars were not always fast, they would come out with wins. Jeremy Mayfield in the RCA number 98 car getting wins at Daytona, like that does not happen anymore. That just does not happen. And if they can make them more equal to each other. I mean, look at trucks. I mean, there's 16, 18 guys. I mean, obviously there's back markers there too, and a lot of times they're just as slow in terms of disparity. But I mean, there's a lot more competitiveness there because of the spec stuff, the Ilmor engines, and getting the chassis to be a lot closer. And I mean, Xfinity's getting things cheaper because of the composite body. If they want this sport to thrive for everybody, they need to make it cheaper for everybody. And I know that there's a lot of rumors of jobs being on the line, and you know what, that hurts. That hurts for people that are in the sport. But at the end of the day, the bottom dollar affects everybody in terms of ownership. And if a team like even Childress, who used to be a 3-4 car organization, can go back from 2 cars to 4 cars, I think that'd be great for the sport. If Roush can go back from 2 cars to 4 cars, I think that'd be fantastic for the sport. So it's just, I think that's always the biggest issue is cost. So these Rick Ware guys have to, the team has to produce 4 or 5 different cars that are 3-4 seconds off because that's the only way to turn a dollar. And it's unfortunate that they have to do that.
Yeah. You mentioned Benson. You mentioned Jeremy Mayfield before he got his Penske ride. One guy you didn't mention, which I feel would fit into that category, would be Elliott Sadler back when he drove for the Wood Brothers. He got a couple of wins, and then he was with
from 39th place finish or from 39th place starting at or was it 41st? Either way, crazy story. That does not happen anymore.
Elliott Sadler just finished up his NASCAR career, and he's now sitting on the armchair, and he got involved in this Kyle Busch situation today on Twitter. And Kevin, you kind of had a little bit of response to it.
Well, I always have some kind of response. I'm definitely one of those. I'm a definite keyboard warrior with a little bit of elevated assholeness to it. I've always been like that. Super person. So if you ever decide to meet me, pretty nice dude. But he decided to equal, like, in terms of like ramifications of what the 52 did to Kyle, to what Ryan Preece did in the 20 at Homestead in 2017 when Sadler was running for a title. And he ultimately blames him for not winning. I don't think they're equal. I even mentioned it on in one of the groups we're in. It is not the same thing. It's not even close to the same thing. I think it's just Elliott trying to get himself back in some kind of relevance as he's exiting the sport. So it's not even close. You have the 52 who is not running for a win, not running for anything except for money, not even points, just running out there trying to log laps for money, and gets in the way and wrecks Kyle Busch and probably hurts his chances to be the top guy going into the round of 12, in terms of points. I think Kyle's going to be fine. I don't think anyone thinks that this is going to hurt him for the round of 12, to get into the round of 12. He's comparing that to him pretty much putting himself in the wall racing Ryan Preece. And totally different situation. Ryan Preece was not only running for a career, he put himself in that 20 car a handful of times to showcase his talent, because he's not a guy who has money. He's not a guy who has a big sponsorship deal behind him in terms of whether it's a parent company. Hello.
Hello.
Jesus. He's a modified guy with a crap load of talent from the Northeast. He puts himself in there 8 to 10 times, and he's running for an owner's championship for Gibbs in that 20 car. And he races Sadler as hard as he can, because guess what? He's comparing himself to guys out there like Byron and obviously Christopher Bell, who ends up being in that car full time the next 2 years. And Sadler, who was a Cup guy. So he's racing Cup guys and Cup prospects for his career, and he races them really hard, as anyone should. And Sadler compares them and calling him a dumbass. I honestly think, and I said it in the tweet, I think the dumbass was Sadler because he put himself in the fence. I think Sadler did everything wrong, and I don't think Priest did anything wrong. He's racing for a win. He's racing for a championship for the team he's on, the team he's racing for, and he's racing for a career. And guess what? The next year, guess who has a Cup ride? Ryan Preece. Guess who's not in NASCAR anymore? Elliott Sadler. And the reason why is A, he's up in age, and B, he has not really performed in Xfinity. He never really he came damn near close to winning a championship, but you know what? That doesn't get you very far if you're almost winning. We've seen guys that come and go, and he's gone. And you know what? Preece is really good, and I don't think he's going anywhere. Obviously, he's in not the greatest of rides with JTG, but you know what? Ryan Preece is a damn good driver, and putting him on the same block as a guy running 3 seconds off pace because of a shit car is not the same. And he ended up looking really bad. You can comb through the responses. A lot of people owned him, and it seemed like a lot of these guys on Twitter think that they just post things and people will be like, "Yep, you got it."
It's sour grapes at this point. This incident between him and Ryan Preece happened 2
years ago.
2 years ago. And he's still not over it, and he's still gonna put him down. Look who's in Cup, and look who's retired. You couldn't keep your sponsor to keep going for another season, Elliott. And you want to talk about, whenever you get the chance, you talk about how now you got this great new life with your kids and everything, and good for you. Yes, great. I'm very happy for you, Elliott Sadler, but you need to get over this, because Ryan Preece did not cost you a championship in 2017. Elliott Sadler cost Elliott Sadler a championship in 2017. Ryan Preece was not even close to the same person in situations as Garrett Smithley was to Kyle Busch. So you're just grasping at straws. You're looking for, you know, just attention on the internet. And I'm looking through some of these comments. I looked at some of them before, and pretty much everybody's on.
That's so true. He's just old and sad.
It's very. I really don't understand the tweet. I really don't know, like, even where he's coming from. I never understood where he was coming from back in 2017 when the incident even happened. Like, it was such a random, like, rage incident by Elliott Sadler. Like, oh, this guy was racing me for position, and he cost me the championship. Fuck Ryan Preece. Like, come on.
Well, a lot of if you go back and watch that race, Byron was the fastest car on the track.
Byron passed him for position, and then he got around Preece.
Right, he was the fastest guy, and he deserved to win the championship. And guess what? He won the championship. So, he really wasn't gonna win anyway. So, whatever. Another thing. Let's keep it on the Twitter. Let's talk about Dave Moody being an idiot again, because I sure as hell love to talk about Dave Moody being a boomer retard. Sorry to those who are a little bit older and take offense to that. Sorry, he's an idiot. I respect him as a radio guy. He's been really great for MRN. But man, someone needs to take that phone away from him, because he's been posting some really dumb things the last few months. I've responded to a great amount of his stupidity and his ignorance about the package. He thinks that because people can pass that the racing's great. That shouldn't be a thing. It shouldn't be like, oh man, a guy went from the back to the front. That's great. It's like, yeah, that happens. That's what's supposed to happen. Like the whole Dover thing. Like people were not supposed to be 3-4 tenths off pace, and you got drivers who know way more than us. People on the sidelines watching. You got owners who know way more than us. There's people on the sideline hating this package, and then you have him blindly defending it. So on Friday or Saturday, he said, I'll pull it up myself so I don't have to go to the stream. He said, where is it? Posted a lot about football. Jets quarterback Sam Darnold, who was out indefinitely with mononucleosis, which I'll get to that in a second. So he said, Jets quarterback Sam Darnold out indefinitely with mononucleosis. Richard Petty drove a 500-mile race with a broken neck. Okay, first off, totally different era. We're talking about, someone driving for their livelihood. He obviously was driving. That's an insane thing to do. That is not something that anyone should do, and I don't advocate for it ever. That's fucking ridiculous. That should never happen ever again. 2, mononucleosis is contagious. A broken neck is not contagious. 3, mononucleosis can kill you because of it basically, not to give a quick medical lesson, but it causes swelling to the spleen, and if it ruptures, you die. You bleed out and die within 5 minutes. Like it's a serious issue. 4, this is not NASCAR. This is we always argue that NASCAR drivers are athletes, 100%, but they're not being pummeled by 300-pound defensive linemen standing there for 4 seconds and getting pummeled by someone like Sam or like Aaron Donald. They're not getting destroyed by a guy who can run a 4.540 and weighs 280 pounds. They're not getting landed on. So this is not the same thing. 100% not the same thing. And I give credit to Mike Bagley, who we raced with him back in the Open Speedway days. So good. Say hello to Mike Bagley, because Bagman is a legend. He came to the defense of those who were saying, like, hey, this is not the same. This is like false equivalence at its fucking finest. And of course, Dave ends up saying, oh, I'm instantly amazed by the number of humorless people on social media. This isn't funny. What's so funny about this? Like, I understand being edgy. Like, oh man, what a pussy. He's not on the field because he's sick, blah, blah, blah. He's got a cold. Like, okay, that's just being ignorant. I can understand that, but like this is like not funny at all. To say like, oh, this is like he should be like. Obviously, he's saying that this is oh, like if you can't go on the field because you're sick, like look at Richard Petty being a badass and being on track driving a 500-mile race in a car that could kill him at any minute because of how unsafe they were, and he's got a broken neck. It's like cool, that's insane. That should not have happened anyway. And guess what? This is 2019. Medicine has come a long way, and health has come a long way. These people are playing for not only their livelihood, this is their career. So if Sam Darnold goes out there and dies, that's not a smart decision. If he goes out there and gets 10 of his teammates sick, that's not a good idea. This is a team sport. It's not like Richard Petty's going out there with a broken neck. You know what? He's only risking himself. And you know what? He was actually risking other people too, because if something happens and he hits the wall and something severe happens to his neck and he veers off and hits somebody else and causes a wreck, you know what? They would have been like, wow, Richard Petty, that was a really dumb decision. And you know what? This is a really dumb thing to say in 2019 or at all, because man, Dave, I'm glad you got owned on Twitter, man. I know you don't know who I am, and you probably will never know who I am, but man, you are one old dude who needs to stay off social media, because you are saying some really dumb things that are not based on knowledge and by facts and by research. It's just really dumb opinions, and you keep making yourself look like a jackass. And I hope one day someone puts you in your place in front of you, because you need it bad.
It's it's sad. It really is. You know, God forbid anybody have a broken neck in NASCAR. Like, what is he gonna say then? Like, is he gonna be like, "Oh, driver, driver A has a broken neck. Richard Petty would have been driving."
He's gonna miss 6 races. Richard Petty ran a race. What are you, some kind of pussy? Come on.
Like, the humor is absolutely lost on me. I don't understand the tweet at all. I really don't. Like, Sam Darnold, imagine it's twofold. One, he could get everybody else on the field sick, and they could also have this semi-dangerous, virus. Or two, he could get hit wrong, and his spleen breaks, it bursts, and he's dead. Like, the humor it just is completely lost on me. I don't understand why the tweet even needed to be made. Yeah, he's a New England guy and he's a Patriots fan, so I guess at that he's just taking a knock at the Jets because they're the division rivals.
Yeah,
But I mean, you're a Dolphins fan. The Jets are your division rival too. Would you ever make a tweet like this? Like, no. This is absolutely stupid. It's just stupid.
I mean, I've never seen.
I thought it was the parody Moody account.
There's a parody account, and it's like, wow, that's really fucked up to say. But you know what? Thank God it's not someone's original thought, because man, that's some stupid thing to say. Nope, it's a genuine guy who's a NASCAR personality, who speaks for a lot of people. He talks to a lot of people on a day-to-day basis. I mean, he has a radio show, and you know what? That's really, really reprehensible to say. Like, I honestly think that's something he should apologize for. Like, that's not something to joke about. Like, mononucleosis is for a lot of people, for 99% of the population, you end up being fine. It's like catching cold or even the flu. You know what? You go through your day, you go through a week or so of, bad, you feel like crap, you have a fever, and then you recover. Well, it's not like that for athletes, because of the whole issue. It causes your spleen to swell up for 4 to 6 weeks. And on the for Monday Night Football, they were talking about it briefly during a drive, and they said he's going to be out at least 4 weeks, and that's at the very bare minimum. So this is a very severe issue. He cannot be in team meetings. He cannot be at the facilities. He cannot do anything for a long time, because this is a team sport. This is a contact sport. And if he gets even 2 or 3 guys sick, guess what? The likelihood that they get other people sick increases exponentially. So this is not something to joke about. And you know what? Richard Petty is a badass. The people who drove back in the day are warriors, and they are guys that, you know what, they are not cut from the same cloth as you and me. I don't think either one of us would even consider racing with a broken freaking neck, as Kurt Angle would say of his Olympics days. He did the same thing. You know what? Back, I'm sure he didn't think that was a very wise decision either. But you know what? He was fighting for his country in the Olympics, and he did it. Good for him. Great story. But you know what? There's another side that he could have had some severe issues driving with a broken neck. And you know what? I'm very happy that he didn't have any issues. That he's still a team owner and he's still a personality for the sport. Good for him. But it's very irresponsible to compare something like that to a disease, or not a disease, a sickness like mononucleosis. It's the kissing disease, and for a lot of people it's fine, but you know what? This is not a scenario where it's just a normal everyday issue. You know, it's a very, very major problem, and I'm like I said, I'm glad there are people out there that criticized him immensely and, you know, shut him down and told him how stupid it was for him to say this, because it was a very, very ignorant thing to say on top of something very, very stupid to say. Don't say that kind of things on Twitter. You know what? He says, "Oh, I have the freedom to say that. And if you don't like it, you can block it." Well, you know what? That's not good enough for me. You cannot say shit like that and think it's okay. Like, that's just ridiculous. Like, it's just insane. It's just insane.
The internet is undefeated once again. Um, People get what they deserve when it comes to social media justice, and Dave and Elliot are both losers on their battles today. Last topic that we have for the day, for the night, is the iRacing race that took place last week at Indianapolis Motor Speedway, the virtual Indianapolis Motor Speedway. What a shit show that last lap was. Corey Vincent won from third place. He got to first in the last 200 feet after our buddy Blake Reynolds, your buddy Blake Reynolds, ended up running out of gas off of turn 4. He was going towards his first career victory and just started running on fumes and made a very unfortunate move and took out another competitor, and that allowed Vincent to go on and take the victory. Overall, the race was actually pretty decent. I know you were kind of worried about it because of the testing that had gone on the week before, but the race was actually pretty good, and they were, besides the point where Keegan Leahy had pulled away by 6 seconds. After they got that one caution, everything really fell into place, and the field strategy definitely helped with it.
The race was awesome. And yeah, I mean, I forget who else works with Keegan besides Zelensky. I know it's Zelensky, Keegan, and someone else. They end up always being fat. I want to say it might be Novak. I'm not 100% though. Regardless of what teams they're on, they're always alliances from a tech standpoint as far as setups. But the race ended up being pretty awesome because of the fuel mileage. I mean, you had guys having to lift, having to get back in traffic to save, and then I thought, man, Blake has this coming to the finish line. It was like a light switch hit. As soon as he hit the finish, or hit the pit lane where the pit road starts, hits the pit wall, he just lost all power. And he even said it seemed like it was going to be fine, because I mean, thanks to it being sim racing, you actually get a telemetry of how much fuel you got left. And I guess even though it said something was there, it just died. And he, in a horrible state of desperation, guy's looking for his first win. He's looking for a lock-in for a $40,000 prize of winning the championship for Peak. Throws a big block on his Tech Alliance teammate, Casey Kerwin, who runs pretty much the same setups as he does. Takes out Casey, who would have probably won his second race in a few weeks in his career. And he got a lot of stuff thrown at him for it. And you know what? He deserves it. But a lot of people don't know what it's like to be in this position. I've never been in this position. Jesus Christ, people yelling around me. I've never had to fight for 40 grand in a sim race. I've never had to fight for that opportunity for $500 in a sim race. And we have to remember, When you win these races, you get $500. When you finish second, you get 250. When you finish third, you get 125. So him going from first to second, that's $250 out of his pocket. You know what? That would be a shitty day for me. Going from 300 yards away from the finish line winning to having to make a desperate attempt at a block, hitting your teammate, wrecking him out of the top three, and giving someone else that doesn't really even have a shot at the championship a win. And he got a lot of stuff, a lot of shit for it, and it was unfortunate, but it ends up setting up a pretty good story and a good week at the Roval for him. He'll be fine. But he was even talking to me. Hi, Jarvis. He was even talking to me about getting suspended because he was very much worried that he was going to get suspended because of the backlash. And you know what? He didn't. Going on to the Roval, which is going to be crazy. I think Zelensky is going to dominate, just like he did at Sonoma. But we're going to see who the top four is going into Homestead, which we get to see live on NBCSN in a few weeks. And I think that's going to be fun. But I 100% will agree that I think any one of us would have done that. And if you are saying otherwise, you either don't know how you would react in that situation on the fly, or you're just lying to yourself. And you know what? Blake is a very good driver. He's one of the best out there. There's a reason why he's had so many top three finishes like he has this year. He's very much due for a win, and I think he'll get one either the rest of this year at some point or next year because the dude's got talent and he deserves to be out there and he deserves to make all the money he's had thus far, and he deserves to be on a good team like Team Dillon Management. And I'm sure they're behind him too. And we're on to the Roval.
The Roval's going to be really interesting because, you know who's not in the top four right now? Luza. Ryan Luza is, and he's not a road course racer. It's crazy that he's probably not going to be one of the four people racing for a championship with the season that he's had. It actually it's mind blowing. He ended up running out of fuel at the end of this race, like so many others did, and went from a possible top five finish to somewhere in the 20s. Where did he end up? He ended up in 24th when it was all said and done. So Luz is on the outside looking in. Zelensky, who dominated at Sonoma, he's on the outside looking in. Second place at Sonoma, Michael Conti, he's on the outside looking in. Those are all three guys that you would think might have a better shot at racing for the championship, but they're all going to be, trying to do what they can. Pretty much Zelensky and Conti are in must-win situations. Luza, I want to say he's 13 points out, so it's not out of the realm of possibilities that he can get in, but he was awful at Sonoma, and I don't think it's going to be much better for him.
He got wrecked at Sonoma, but he's not a road guy,
No.
and I don't think he's getting the same setups he was getting earlier this year. Either that or they're just not performing up to par. He's actually regressed a pretty big amount the last half of the season. So, man, it's going to be so close. I wish I could find an updated version of the standings. I always can't find the updated version of it.
So Novak and Leahy, I think they're both pretty well locked in, barring any catastrophe that happens to them at the Roval. Then you got Blake, and then you got Garrett Lowe. They're tied for third and fourth, and they're 13 points ahead of Luza. I think Blake, he's shown to be a pretty good road course racer. I know that he raced at one of our races when we were doing our iRacing truck series, and he can get that thing loose, as he showed at Watkins Glen that one time, and hold on to it and be fast. But I think he'll be all right. Lowe, I really don't know him that well. I think he had a 14th place finish or so at Sonoma, so he could have an okay day and point his way in. But you got to look at Zelensky and you got to look at Conti. They finished 1-2 at Sonoma. Either one of them are going to be the favorite to win at the Roval, I think. And I think them winning will put them into the playoffs, and it'll be, Leahy and Novak and one other person on points. And if Blake can stay out of trouble, I think he'll be that guy.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I think it is winning you're in. So I think Zelensky's going to win. He had a pretty big lead over Conti. One thing about the Roval is it's a road course, and one thing about road course is that they don't run cautions, so it's flag to flag. Um, Strategy and speed are what it comes down to for these, and making sure you don't get wrecked. And this is a wild track. It's a very difficult track. I think it's harder than Sonoma or Watkins Glen or Road America or Mid Ohio, uh, which NASCAR goes to in real life as well. So it's a very tough track. Blake is fast. He's really good at the road courses. Garrett's good too. I think they were actually battling at Sonoma for the most part. And I think Blake kind of distanced himself from those guys running the 9th to 15th spot because of his strategy. So I think it's going to be close. I think it's going to be a battle for top 3 in points because I think Zelensky is a shoe-in to win. And if he doesn't win, it's Conti. Hi, Jarvis. I see you up there. He's way up on the freaking ledge on our counter. So he's 15 feet off the ground. So he's yelling at me to get him down.
Oh, okay. Jarvis in sentry mode up there. So yeah, that's what we got for this week. Man, we talked about a lot this week. But I had fun tonight.
Yeah.
What do you got going on for the rest of the week?
I got work tomorrow and Wednesday. And then Thursday I got off, so I'll probably just go to the gym, do my normal play from 4,000, and that's I've never hit 4,000 iRating on iRacing, so I'm hoping tomorrow I can get some time to do that, run maybe some nationals and run a good race at Texas and get that. So I'm excited for that. And then Sunday, me and the girlfriend are going to Tampa for her first event of her birthday, because you know how that is. It's a month of celebration for them. So doing that, and then I got a few days off after a couple of days of working after that. So I'm excited for the next few weeks. I think that's what I have to deal with every day. So don't get a bird if you don't like noise. But that's about it. What's going on with you?
So you're not going to be at Richmond on Sunday?
No, I will not.
Oof.
Not this No, I'll be. Oh yeah, no, not this Sunday. I will not be there.
Big sad. Well, we'll have to get somebody to fill in your 26 car for FTF.
I gotta hope I have enough points to get in after that and figure it out.
Yeah. I'm off tomorrow from my other job, or from my main job. I still got work in 4 hours for my my secondary job. So I'm gonna probably hit the sack right after this. Spend most of the day playing World of Warcraft, because that's what I do now, and putting this up on all our social medias as I normally do on a Tuesday. Where you can catch us on Apple, you can catch us on Google, you can catch us on Spotify. I remembered to click the record button this week, so I don't have to go through extra steps to get it. It'll also be up on YouTube, because that's what to do. Maybe I'll find some time tomorrow to clip some things, and we could get some clips up, and we could actually do the thing that we said I was gonna fucking do. I said I was gonna do. So, otherwise, for the rest of the week for me, I've got the iPhone launch, and you've got the iPhone launch on Friday. We're gonna be opening up our store at 8 in the morning.
Same.
So, yeah, that's gonna be a fun ass day. Other than that, I got nothing.
Well, I think it's a good way to end it.
All right, let's wrap it up here. Thank you everybody for tuning in tonight. Hope you enjoyed the show. We'll catch you next week talking about whatever happens at Richmond. Hopefully we got some more drama implications. Maybe Kyle Busch will give us another quote. Otherwise, thank you all for tuning in. Enjoy the rest of your night. I'm Justin Melillo. That's Kevin McAdams. Thanks for tuning in, and goodbye.
Goodbye.